but just enough to kind of work temporarily in a space, where I'm like, is this big enough to get a wheelchair through? Is this big enough to get like a walker into the shower? Is it got a shower opening in the master versus like a tub shower combo?
Throwing enough fishing lines out there and just trying and just keeping and trying, and let's try in this realm and talk to this person. It does open up doors, and that, these investors that I've met are a result of that conversation of like, hey, I have to put myself out there on these investor forums. I've got to pay for a few leads. And then I've, seen a few products in that.
You are now listening to the Real Estate Heavyweights Podcast.
You see this guy here staring back at you? That's your toughest opponent. Every time you get into the ring, that's who you're going against. I believe that in boxing, and I do believe that in life.
Your weekly deep dive into DFW real estate, life, and beyond. With your hosts, Tavis Westbrook and Ashton Hines.
Well, hello and welcome again to another episode of the Real Estate Heavyweights Podcast. I'm Ashton Hines, your charming and lovable host, one half of the Real Estate Heavyweights. I am with my friend and hopefully soon flipping partner, Tavis Westbrook. What's up, Tavis?
Hey, good morning. Good morning. We are.
Did you like that new intro?
I did. It's always interesting what we're going to say when we open this up. So
it's ad-lib.
But we are here and we're excited. Today's a good day. Yeah.
Really, really great weather. It's perfect. It's chilly in the morning. It's been warming up to, mid 60s. I went on a nice crisp walk with a patient yesterday. What's funny about walking in the neighborhoods, some of these older neighborhoods, their houses, I'm working with this guy's 90, his house, mid 70s. So walking in those neighborhoods, it's great because you kind of get this slow walk past these houses and you start looking and be like, that window's boarded up. Those shingles are missing, And so I've actually seen several houses, and then you'll see a really bad one across the street and you say, hey, what's the deal with the house? Oh, they haven't lived there in years, So I've got to figure out a way to capitalize on that knowledge because I'm right there in those neighborhoods. And, if I could figure out a way or not, look, it's not just figuring out the way, it's figuring out the courage to like call someone or go knock on a door right there and say, look, I know this is odd, but would you consider selling? So,
well, it's having that good skip tracer too, because and now it's gotten pretty crazy with trying to track people down and find people. So good skip tracer. The true people search, I think it was that I sent to you. That seems to be pretty good.
Yeah, that sounds right. Actually, I'll give a shout out to I think he listens every once in a while. I have one friend who's in the FBI, and we were having dinner, and I asked him one time, I can't remember. I said, from a normal person standpoint, are there any decent sites to like figure out who someone is? And I want to say that's actually a site he said. I may be wrong, but I think he signed off on that site. And he pointed to some tax records and different things like that. So it's fun every once in a while. He's hilarious. He's the most unassuming person you could meet, but he's got great stories. He's been doing it a long time. He actually, he was an agent in North Dakota or South Dakota on an Indian reservation, a Native American reservation. I don't even know how we're supposed to say that anymore, but his stories from that, because it's kind of lawless. Like a lot of that area, they don't have a lot of rules, and so it's kind of nuts. So anyway, he's got great stories. But yeah, he signed off on the skip tracing one.
Those areas, some of the most third world country feeling places ever. And it's sad. It's really sad. I mean, on my road trips throughout the United States, we've been through several pockets and Indian reservations, and they're rough, man. I mean, it's just sad that that's what's happened to that society in those areas, and of course then they allow gambling and drinking, and people are just drinking their life away, and it's extremely sad. But,
I don't remember the name of the movie, but a couple months ago there's some movie that's pretty evidently, and I had to ask him about it, and he's like, yep, I've seen that movie, and that was pretty much my job, because it was a kind of a crime mystery, and they brought in the FBI, and they were dealing with the local authorities. And he said, yeah, it's pretty similar.
Wow.
So I'll have to figure that one out and send it to you. But anyway, enough about that. So real estate world is still moving and grooving, trying to make offers. I've got a new investor that reached out. We've got him hooked up with the mortgage broker. So he actually is sending in his paperwork, and I'm hoping to connect with him and try to place him in something. He's a high income guy that wants to use real estate to try to offset some taxes. And so I've really been diving deep. We've talked a little bit about the cost segregation and depreciation, all that stuff. I've been trying to learn as much as possible because that's really what he's going after. And there's some nuances there that will work for someone who has a W-2, but it's not across the board. Hey, you can just write off everything, front load everything, and it just automatically deducts from your W-2. It has to be a specific type of real estate. And what it comes down to is active gains and active losses versus passive gains and passive losses.
Yep.
I don't really want to get into the details, but when you have a W-2, you can't really write that off with passive losses from like an apartment complex, as far as I understand. You have to have an active Airbnb type property to write off active gains, because your W-2, you're actively working in that business, and that's what it works in. So anyway, it's been fun learning about that. I've got another investor kind of on the fringes who also is expressing some interest in similar stuff. So I'm like, man, if I can get on a roll and help out Aaron over there in Richardson and help out the next guy and kind of learn about that and be a resource, I would love that pocket, because it's a super interesting field, and I feel like I'm helping them. I feel like I'm actually bringing something, a knowledge base to the table to say, hey, let's structure your portfolio like this. Let's do 2 of these and 1 of these, and this will kind of make sense. And so maybe I'm at the beginning of that journey, which would be super cool. So how's the flip going over in Wiley? I'll say this. I think it's going well. I hope it's going well. I have an open house, my first during the week open house planned for this Friday. So supposedly it is being staged. I hope that went well yesterday.
Yeah, I plan to stop by there today and see the results. But they're supposed to be done with the staging by 10 a.m. this morning, and pictures are lined up for tomorrow. So, now we just got to get it on the market and get it sold. So,
yep, grooving. So, and then I know you and I are walking a house this afternoon, trying to pick up another flip, and this might be our first official foray into trying to flip something together. On paper, it doesn't look like this huge home run, but we're going to go walk it and just see if we can. I know you sort of made a soft offer to the agent or the wholesaler. So I'm hopeful. It's over in Garland, and I know you know that pocket well. So I would love to flip something over there.
Yeah, the key is, and here's something I've got to brag on you a little bit about. We're now into a month and a half into the new year, and one of your major goals is to transition out of therapy and be full-time in real estate, right? And that can mean the combination of traditional real estate as long with the investment side, and you're on track to do that. You're taking action, you're putting things in place, you're blocking out your schedule, you're making time for everything. You've got a very busy schedule, as well as, taking care of your family as well. And if you guys don't know, Ashton is a private chef there in his house. So not only is he the one that cooks, but he's also the one that shops and goes grocery shopping and has to deal with that as well. So I don't know how you do it all, but kudos to you for doing that, and it just keeping a positive mindset and moving forward each and every day. And these things happen if you take the right steps, you put in action plans, you set your goals, things start happening. So I think it's important, just as you listeners out there listen, you can sit there and talk about it all day. You can do analysis paralysis. You can do all these things that end up holding us back from taking the right steps forward. And once you start actually taking action and making these steps, and things start happening, things start falling in place. So I'm proud of you
so
with
I don't
that.
get in complete trouble. Yeah, I appreciate it. Karen does go to the store some. So I don't want to get punched later today, but yeah, I do, that's kind of one of the roles that I took on actually a long time ago when we were in Monroe. I went back to therapy school and I wasn't making any money. And that was kind of one of my ways to say, look, I can handle this and this. And, she was working and I was going to school, but I was like, I can handle this. And I just held on to that. And I've gotten to where I actually, I enjoy cooking and I've become decent at it. And so that typically lands on my plate. But it's fun because, we sat down at the early of the year and we kind of wrote out some goals. And, everyone always says until you write something out and you kind of speak it, it's not really, it's sort of a dream. It's a wish.
Yep.
And to and I'm not doing it perfectly. There's some things that I wish I could do better. And like I said, cold calling and door knocking and stuff like that, I think could help out the business. But, throwing enough fishing lines out there and just trying and just keeping and trying and let's try in this realm and talk to this person. It does open up doors, and that, these investors that I've met are a result of that conversation of like, hey, I have to put myself out there on these investor forums. I've got to pay for a few leads. And then I've, seen a few products from that, and which is great. And it encourages you to put it out a little bit more and a little bit more. So I appreciate that.
Yeah.
Yeah. So let's talk a little bit about the market. The market is similar. It's heating up some. A lot of people feel like we're kind of on this cusp of this run, the spring run, which a lot of times the spring does bring a lot of activity anyway. And coming off of 2023, that felt really pent up of like, I don't know if we should do this. It might be that it really lets loose for a while and runs on values. And I've read a few things that are, professional flippers. A guy, James Daner, I follow. He's on the Market podcast. He's a big flipper up in Seattle. He's kind of the mind of, look, if you can start picking up some stuff now that's going to time out in the late spring, early summer, he feels like he's going to do really well with those properties. Not that everyone can just turn it on and off, but the nice thing about what you do is that you kind of keep business going. You keep your guys around, you keep moving. And it's almost like dollar cost averaging. And I think your mindset's even more like that this year is, hey, even if this isn't a home run or even a double or triple, let's just do some business. Let's try to flip something, keep the guys busy, keep the flow of realtors that you can say yes to and the wholesalers you have relationships with, keep those guys around. And then once it really starts churning, you're going to be 100% geared up, ready to take advantage of it. So I'm excited about this year because I don't know, you may always have this volume, but I feel like over the last couple of weeks, you've been really running a lot of numbers and walking deals. Does it seem like that part's ticked up a little bit?
Yeah. I mean, it some weeks are more than others, and then the biggest thing that gets me right now is things, because we're in the market that we're in. You've got a lot of decisive people. So, as much as I would love sometimes to be the option, make an agreement, give the offer. I mean, I could do that typically, on the spot, or maybe I've got to go, just verify a few things and then come back. But typically that offer is coming, within a couple hours from the time that I walk the property. And some of them have been like 2, 3, 4 weeks of following up. Like, where are we at on this? What's going on? What do we need to do? And then, it's like a little bit of negotiating back and forth, and then still waiting on the contract to get executed. And, and then, of course, then we got to change timelines. We got to change, closing dates. We've got to adjust all those things when that happens. So I've run into that a few times, and that's frustrating. And that's just something new I've got to adapt to that used to not be that way, but it seems like it is now. It's like when I've got one that I feel like, is a workable deal, it's not always immediate that we're executing moving forward. So,
well, and I know it's been helpful in a way. And, I know you have a lot of friends with the KW circle. KW, I think, has an official channel for agents to kind of put up properties to look at. And it seems like it's good in a way because it's sort of making it more aware, agents more aware that it's, you can do this with properties. This is a way to dispo a property through people that we know at the office.
Yeah.
But it's also created some competition for you, because for a long time it was this kind of unofficial channel. You were the unofficial channel,
Yeah.
and people would come to you. And now it's like this marketplace, and there's other people that are kind of bidding on some similar deals, and it just makes it more difficult. And all more the reason, like, I need to do my part to bring some deals that have nothing to do with the office, and go find some direct to the seller stuff, or contact some other agents or whatever.
And that's tough sometimes. You've got to be willing to change and adapt your business to adjust to market conditions. You can't keep doing exactly the same thing and expect that you're going to get the same result, all the time.
Yeah.
And so sometimes you got to change it up. And, and yes, there's become more, more competition. The iBuyer, scenario that was kind of a new thing, 6 years ago, has now become a very popular thing. And so now, not only do you have companies like KW, you've got other big, real estate companies out there that have all now created their own, inter-database, iFinder type of program, or iBuyer, situation, right? And iBuyer stands for instant buyer, right? Basically cash buyer type of program. The frustrating thing to me is probably more so that the training, to me, doesn't prepare the person putting the property out there for sale. It doesn't really train the agent. Giving that as an option doesn't train that agent to have a specific conversation with the seller on what to expect. And that's the frustrating part to me, because more so than ever, I get responses back that sellers declined all offers. They're all too low. Right. That's the response. That all offers are too low. Sellers declined all offers. Right. And mind you, this could be something that's been going on for over a week or a week and a half. Like, come on, there needs to be something better that dials it in. But I think because they do enough business of things that do close, they just, it's all about a volume game. It's just the numbers. It's like, if we get 100 properties on there and we get 10 to close, we're good,
Yeah.
So,
but I'm sure that's how Myers is, and a lot of wholesalers work that way. But and I'm sure you've done some training, because I'm new to the office, but that might be a great training, to kind of touch base again with some of those agents that want to use that portal. Is like, hey, here's how you go about it. You a lot of them have the retail mindset, of course, because that's where they're coming from. And, and they want I think there's also that, I can't blame them. You have a potential seller in front of you. It's hard to have hard conversations. You don't want to be punched. You don't want them to go find another agent, and you want to salvage this deal. And so I'm sure it's very delicate to say, and a lot of them are not used to those conversations, to say, hey, would you take 200,000 less than you think you might be able to get on the market?
I think something as simple as what I try to do is I dummy it down, right? When I'm sitting in the living room with the seller and I explain that, hey, I want to be an option for you, I will literally do, like the layers on the cake, right? Let's say it's a $300,000 ARV. I'm going to tell them my cost of sale is 5%, right? And that's going to be 15,000 off the top. So now we're dealing with a 285 net to seller, or 285 number minus renovation. Let's say it's 50K, so now I'm down to 235. Oh, I want to make a profit. What's my profit need to be? If I need to make $35,000 on this deal, then I need to buy it for 200,000. Right. And it makes it very simple, very simple for them to see it, in that sense. Right. Because they're like, oh, okay. I get it now. You have 50,000. That's about right. That's kind of quotes I've gotten for the house. And, I see it. I can see that 50,000 could be spent here. But what most people don't see is the profit. They don't see that. Oh, you want to make 35 grand? Oh, I was just thinking it was, 300,000 and I needed to put 50 in it. You're going to buy it for 250, and you're offering me 200, that's just way too low. Well, how do the numbers work? And there's a cost of,
it's hard to feed the family with that.
Yeah. And there's a cost of sale. I mean, it costs me money to sell it, just like it costs you money to sell it. Right. So I think to me, it's simple. Like, it's very simple just to teach the agents that when they go through the training to put properties up on this portal, they have training to know how to do it and what's to be expected on, like, the information that needs to be uploaded, yada, yada. But to me, there's not training to coach the seller on, what to expect out of these offers, and that's the frustrating part. But
yeah, and a lot of that goes back to that conversation we had last week of, walking through, and these are the things that are, or you could be wrong, blah, blah, blah. So yeah, that'd be a cool training. And then we'll move on here in a second. But one thing I was going to say is that last one we walked in Canyon Creek, that agent was a Keller Williams agent, but from a different office. And I thought, it's interesting that she's calling you, which kind of leads me to believe that she doesn't have anyone in her office. So maybe it's like starting point for us to say, hey, let's hit up some of these other Keller Williams offices and just make sure they don't have like, hey, do you need to go to investor guy? That's what I thought of when she came to you after that. I was like, well, that's weird, because I wonder why they don't have those same trainings there and have the investor group and have 2 or 3 guys bidding for these deals. She's calling you. So I thought that was cool. I was like, well, maybe that's something we can think about. So
yeah. And we did that for many years. I mean, we taught, and it kind of started in our office and then it expanded. And then we were doing, my past partner and I were teaching, for the, metro centers, Collin County Board of Realtors, Metro Techs, we were teaching, MCE classes for that. And that helped. I mean, it helped to just building that network, and so I still have a lot of network that expands past just our office, that, with people I've dealt, we
need to get the real estate heavyweights out there. We got a brand now. We can wear hoodies.
I agree.
All right. Well, let's go ahead and touch on the news.
Ladies and gentlemen, can I please have your attention?
From Dallas, Texas, the flash, apparently official.
There's good news and bad news.
This is a massive story. Who wouldn't publish it?
We landed on the moon!
Man, I've got certain information, all right? Certain things have come to light.
And I need all of you to stop what you're doing and listen.
The news of the day here in Dallas is nothing huge, but the headline, actually it was one of the main headlines in the Dallas Morning News, is one of our favorite chicken restaurants, Chick Fil A.
Hey.
Turns out they're doing a pretty decent business, and they're going to open up a $100 million distribution center. And the interesting part about the article for me was it's in Hutchins, Texas. I'm like, Hutchins, this is in the Dallas Morning News. How is there a town here that I don't know where Hutchins is, And so I had to look it up on a map, and sure enough, it's on 45 on the way to Houston, just kind of southeast of Dallas. There's a town called Hutchins. And when I did home health, I actually did home health, South Dallas, East Dallas, Lancaster, DeSoto, Duncanville. I did that for a time. And that area is really full of big distribution centers, because I think the land is a little cheaper on that south side of town, a lot of vacant land, and it's really good access to I-20, I-45, and 35.
When I-20 turns into 635 too, so it's easy to catch that loop. Yeah. It's filled with all those huge warehouses, and eventually we'll be home to the automated semi truck, which I had a patient who actually sells semi trucks, and he was talking about it. He said they're already on the road. There's already automated semi trucks on the road. Oh gosh,
which is insane. So they go to those hubs. Some of them are automated. They'll pull into those hubs, and then they'll get an actual driver to sort of drive it. It's called last mile. So then they'll go drive that to whatever Chick Fil A or Walmart or whatever they need to go to from those. In little side note,
that's crazy.
But Chick Fil A opening up $100 million distribution center. It's going to bring in several hundred jobs for that. So,
I mean, have you ever been to one that's not just completely busy?
Chick Fil A, no. Yeah. And I'm one of the idiots that'll sit there and wait too. What's funny is Chick Fil A. In home health and real estate, you have to have sort of a hierarchy of bathrooms. So I'm driving around town all day and
I can
talk to Karen.
To yeah.
I got to go to the bathroom a lot. So I know where pretty much every QT, racetrack, sort of your go-to every day. I'm just going to run in and use the restroom. I used to feel guilty about it, but now QT's bathrooms I know which door to go into. Just go, come out, you're good. And but I will say Chick-fil-A is on the list. Chick-fil-A, McDonald's actually, because you can they're busy. You can go in, pop out. No one's going to think bad about you.
Say, hey, you didn't buy anything.
Right. And, every once in a while you grab a chicken sandwich or something, but no, they're always busy. And Chick-fil-A, I mean, they've got it. We actually have a friend who owns a Chick-fil-A up in McKinney. And so I've heard them talk about the business, and I've got another friend who's real high up in cane. So it's funny, the two chicken guys will sit there and talk about cost of chicken and flour, and it's a real enthralling conversation every once in a while. But the bottom line is they make a lot. I think Chick Fil A's make plenty of money. They have an interesting franchise model that it doesn't cost a lot to buy into their franchises, and they hire within. So a lot of it, like they actually started out working at at the front desk of a Chick Fil A as minimum wage, and they worked their way up to owning a mall location, and then they owned one in Texarkana. Then they got one here in Dallas, and they kind of moved their way up in location. So it's really, really cool. But
yeah, I remember when they were just in the malls in the 90s, and it was like, what is this? This is great, And the Northeast didn't I don't know if they're in the Northeast or not, but Northeast didn't have them at that point in time. And I, lived in Rhode Island in my teenage years and would come down, to Texas for the summer. And I remember, at the Irving Mall, they had one, and it was like, what is this place? This is great. This is so delicious, and it was just like the chicken sandwiches back then. I don't even remember if they had nuggets.
But no, they have it figured out, and they just have such a strong brand. I always joke that, especially we lived in Monroe, for whatever reason, pretty much anytime there was a large political something happening, some Supreme Court decision or something in the actual cultural ether that was Christian based and moral based, I always felt like they justified going to Chick Fil A little bit more because they knew it was a really good Christian company and it was kind of part of their tithe, because I would always think that it would just blow up. Like just people lined up because Chick Fil A took some stance on something. But so they got that going too, and it's really, really good. And they've got it's fast and, they're polite. So yeah, I mean, good grief. They've got a lot figured out. So one of these days, we've talked a lot about food, but we've never really talked about our food scene here that we enjoy and kind of our top restaurants and stuff. I think we need to at some point, because I know we've got opinions, and you guys go out a good bit and we probably go out too much. So the other news article that was interesting to us, because turns out Tavis and I went to dinner the other night at a Mexican restaurant at this place called City Line, and it was in the news because they had sold recently. I think the article said for $576 million. State Farm is the main tenant there. It's at 75 and George Bush. It's a huge development. They've got a lot of really cool restaurants down there. Got a barbecue place, Mexican sushi, and it kind of gives those. I mean, it's 2 or 3 high rises for State Farm. Gives all those employees a place to go. But the article was about the shortfall in tax base for a lot of these towns, because Richardson actually has that building assessed at $700 million. So look, you got $125 million shortfall.
Well, and make sure you note that, I mean, these properties are selling undervalued because, several things. One is, interest rates have gone up. So these loans are coming due. Commercial loans are typically, shorter term loans, right? They're rare that they're going to be, 20, 30 years on a deal, right? They're typically 5 years, maybe 10 years. And so they're resetting. And so the numbers are going up. And then you have, COVID that happened a few years back, and that changed the vacancy amounts in a lot of these office buildings. So the combination of that with the interest rates going up, obviously the high-rise office and just office in general has taken a huge hit. And if anyone knows anything about just, how office values are typically calculated, commercial in that sense, right, is all about the net operating income and then divided into a cap rate, right? And that typically is how the values are created. So when debt service increases and not net operating income has decreased, then that value is going to drop significantly, right? And so that's what we're seeing.
The cap rate's probably staying about the same.
Yeah. So what we're seeing is those rates, or that the values have taken huge hits, and there was a couple different articles with different references of these buildings, City Line being one of them. And City Line's not that old of a building. I mean, it's within the last 10 years, I believe. Don't get me with the years and math again, because
let's not start there. But yeah, you're right.
Well.
I think it's 10 years.
And I want to say it's within the last 10 years, right?
Yeah.
nevertheless, because of that, and so what happens is, the cities, of course, have valued these buildings at what these loan amounts were, and what the sales were in the past. And so now that, their tax assessed value of these buildings are extremely high, and now they're selling for under that value. Mm-hmm. And, of course, they're going to go and fight it. They're going to go to the city and go, hey, I didn't, the value's not where you think it is. It's here because it's what I paid. And obviously those are huge amounts of money. So it is going to affect the local economy and school districts and, things like that. Budgets are definitely going to be cut because the income is going to be significantly less. Yeah. So it's definitely going to have
there's
impact.
a lot of, there will be some offset because a lot of the residential, has gone up, and, I'm sure they'll have something, but when you have 125 million in one building, I'm sure if that's just representative of that. And then when you have the next 4 or 5 miles surrounding there that said, hey, they're assessed at this, there was way too high, actually reassess ours too. I'm sure there's a ripple effect on that too. So yeah, it's interesting. The whole, multifamily, I was reading something else. It's definitely not out of the woods yet. We've talked about it several times. Just some of those multifamily guys are just going to get hammered, and they're probably going to go back to the bank. There's going to be some restructuring. A lot of the commercial buildings they're trying to find new ways to use them. The malls are reinventing themselves. They're throwing in apartments and townhomes and hotels and all these things. And, commercial buildings are trying to figure out how can we make this old office building a hotel or apartments. From a structural standpoint, it's not that easy, I'm sure, on a lot of them, but there's just going to be this phase of trying to figure it out. And at the end of the day, there's probably some of them that are just going to get demolished and turned into something useful. Like that mall over there at 635. What's that one at 635 in Preston? The Valley View. Good grief, man. That looks like
they had some really cool plans on it, about 6 or 7 years ago, and I was excited to see it. They were calling it kind of Midtown with the big park and a lot of kind of like an idea of like how New York is split, right, between downtown and uptown and midtown and that kind of thing. And it was going to be pretty cool, but I haven't seen anything develop on that over the years. So
no, it's still pretty.
I don't
looks
know
like
what
a
it's
bomb. Looks like a bomb went up.
Yeah,
they did. I'll tell you who made money there: some attorneys, a design firm, and a demolition crew. Yeah. And other than that, that's not much happening over there. So.
No, for sure.
All right. Well, those are kind of the highlights of the news. Today, we wanted to touch on our friends over at the Spruce. They are the go-to website for lists. I mean, I'm talking top 24 shades of purple to use in your kitchen for 2024, like stuff like that. They come out with lists constantly. And one of their lists that they were talking about really hit home for me from a home health standpoint. And they were talking about the top things you can do to your home to age in place. We call it aging in place. So if you have an older adult, they don't want to go to assisted living, or they can't afford to go to independent living or assisted living. They want to kind of stay in the house they've been in for a while. What are the things you can do? And I've told patients for a long time, if you compare the monthly cost to some of those assisted and independent living places that range from $3,000 to $6,000 to $7,000 easy, depending on the services. Let's say you got a year out of that and you're at $5,000. Well, that's a $60,000 investment for a year. What could you do to your house for $60,000 to make it livable for maybe 2 years? And now you've saved money. And I've had this conversation about showers and the doors and all that stuff. And so from a flipping standpoint, from a new build standpoint, what I want to talk about with, you, Tavis, is that, is this something that you've considered before? Is this something that you ever intentionally do on a flip, or have you ever built around these ideas? And then maybe we can talk about some of the things that you can do and, what I think are valuable things from a therapy standpoint and that sort of thing. But to start off, have you ever flipped a house and actually done some of these fixes of widening doors or specifically making an accessible shower or something like that?
Yeah. So the, in our midterm rentals, I've been cautious enough to think forward a little bit on, not everywhere, but like in the master suite, for instance, I've made sure that the the door leading into the master bath, is bigger, right? So that you can get a wheelchair in there. So anything above 30 inches typically will work for that. So, in the construction world, we call that a 2-4 or a 2-6 opening, which is 2 foot 6 inches, or like a 2-8, would be 32 inches, or a 3-0, right? Is obviously 3 foot. So anything like bigger than like a 2-6 opening typically is what's looked at there, just to be able to get a wheelchair through a door. Most of your bedroom doors are going to be a standard 2 foot 8, 2 foot 8 or 32 inches. So you're usually good there. But a lot of these old houses and even production builds, what they do is they, your bathrooms and your closet doors, things like that, a lot of times are just 2 feet, 24 inches wide. And so that's not big enough to get a wheelchair through it. And so, it's just being cautious of that, especially in the midterms. I'm thinking through there's a range of different people that might stay there. So if we can be somewhat handicap accessible, not 100%, ADA regulation, because then you get into counter heights and you get into, a lot of different things.
Ramps
and access to, the toilet areas and grab bars and, roll-in showers and all these different things. But just enough to kind of work temporarily in a space, where I'm like, is this big enough to get a wheelchair through? Is this big enough to get like a walker into the shower? Is it got a shower opening in the master versus like a tub shower combo? Things like that are much easier to kind of get in and out of. We are cautious on that. Now, I will say, when I built from the ground up back in like 2015, 16 through 17, and we were building some custom homes, I did think forward in the design plan. So we were dealing with minimum size opening doors were typically 2-6, which is going to be your 30-inch doors, especially like in bathrooms and things like that. And then we would plan ahead in the stud in the framing stage to block out walls like around toilet areas, and I say block them out with like 2x6s that were ran horizontally around areas that you might have to add grab bars, because you would block it. You could pretty much put grab bars anywhere. And we would think about that in the showers. We'd think about it in the toilet areas. And again, kind of building them in mind with 1-stories, the doors were big enough everywhere, and just trying to think forward to that where, you could buy one of our houses and stay in it, for the rest of your years. And we also designed it with like the recessed shower pans in the slabs, so we were able to build them up flush. They didn't have curbs, the curbless showers and things like that. So yeah, I mean, we thought about that kind of stuff ahead of time.
Some of the things I've thought of, well, first of all, my one question from the door opening thing, when I was thinking about this, does that include the actual door with the hinge? It's inset. Is that just the frame when they say it's 2-6 or whatever? Is that the frame, or does that include the usable width when the door's on there?
So when you call it like a 2-6 door, that's the actual size of the door. So typically the framing, the roof opening is typically about 2 inches bigger, because you're going to need about a 1-inch buffer, for the jamb, and just, to be able to get it square. So typically,
because I've had to take some doors off of hinges before. Like I'll have a patient, especially like, let's say a Fox and Jacobs house. So they, a lot of them, they'll have those hall bathrooms, or kind of like these kind of long, narrow hall bathrooms. And they have to kind of do this side shuffle with the walker. And sometimes we'll just take that door off the hinge, and that's helpful. You can flip the wheels around on a walker, and it makes them more narrow. My thought, actually, if I was going to design a house tomorrow, I thought of this the other day, is I might actually advocate for some form of a pocket door. Now, the problem with the pocket door with someone who's older is the dexterity to actually open it and close it. If it closed all the way flush, it might be difficult for them to open and close it. But my thought is, sometimes when you're opening up a door, it gets in the way of the wheelchair or the walker. So I think it could be useful if there were more pocket doors in a house that was designed for someone that was a little bit older. The other thing that, from a design standpoint, the showers are great. One of the best showers I've ever seen is that roll-in shower you're talking about, where they kind of make a little gradual hump in the concrete, and then so the water stays in there. But if you needed to roll up there's no glass on that end, and so you could just roll a wheelchair up in there, and if you needed to, you could bathe someone in a wheelchair, back them out, wipe the wheelchair down, and that, some people go weeks between bathing because it's so hard for them to get in and out of showers. And I've actually had several people I've worked with that have fallen in the shower. It's a big deal. So having wide openings that are not terribly heavy, like some of the glass can get heavy. So there's a balance there. But I love that if you have enough space, I've told several people, let's just open it up, get that roll-in curb there, and the water won't go everywhere, and you'll always be able to use that. So I really like that. I like the grab bar blocking. I thought about the pocket door. The one thing that they mentioned was some counter height stuff, and not that I'm the definitive expert, but I've done it now for 10 years. I've been in hundreds of homes. I don't deal with a lot of people that are 100% wheelchair bound all the time. And so to design a spec type kitchen around a wheelchair, I think is a little bit much. I mean, you could, if you knew that you're designing something for someone specific, but, I would say maybe lowering the height of the microwave, kind of keeping in mind maybe the oven height or microwave height for some people that, most older people are shorter. It's just how it happens. Even if they were tall at some point, they kind of, they compress. So, having a really high cabinet or a microwave, that space will just be completely unusable at some point. And so having that stuff would be important.
Well, even just having more drawers in your lowers and stuff too. So, it's easier to access the things in the lower cabinets and things like that too can be helpful. I'll mention this and then I think we'll wrap it up here. But the pocket doors are great ideas. I love pocket doors. You've got to think through it a little bit on the thickness of the wall. If there's any electrical switches or outlets that are going to be on that wall, you can double up the wall to make up for that. But it's all about the hardware. So if you just buy the cheap, pocket door frame that is built with 3/4 inch plywood on the sides and, the very cheap kind of rail design, pocket door, which most builders and most pocket doors you see these days are that cheap design. Those get frustrating because they don't always work really well, and the hardware on them are just not the best design. But you can get better hardware, and you can get, now they have like the slow close design stuff. You can get some really expensive heavy duty door hardware that, you press the button and it pops out for you. As far as, the mobility of being able to do that. So there's a lot of cool stuff. You just got to think ahead, and you're going to spend money on it. But they can be done really well. A lot of the pocket doors we built were solid core doors, and, we made them in 2x6 walls. So we were actually turning a stud sideways instead of a 3/4 inch wall cavity. You had an 1.5 inch wall cavity on each side, So that way you had a lot more stability. If you put a screw in there for a towel rod holder or something like that, it wasn't going to affect, wasn't going to scrape the door.
Yeah.
So
the last couple of things that they said is just they're moving more towards smart home. So, more and more older folks, they are comfortable with technology. I have people with Apple watches, and they all have iPhones. So maybe making some smart home adjustments where lights will come on automatically. You could do that manually with the doors going into closets and stuff can come on, but things that happen automatically for them, maybe timer lights and stuff like that. The other thing that from a construction standpoint, is the ingress egress. So many garages are hard to get in and out of with one awkward or two awkward steps, and so many people have a hard time with that. Going out the front door, you've got these odd width steps. Sometimes you can't fit a walker fully on one. So little things like that. I feel like I could design a pretty good house for a senior. So if Del Webb is looking for a consultant, then, maybe hit me up. All right. Well, cool. I hope everybody has a great week. If you want to reach out to Tavis, he's on Instagram, Facebook, Tavis Westbrook, Travis without the R. He does design work. He's actually we're going over today. He's going, I'm going to meet him at the Flip afterwards to do some design measurements for Aaron's house. He's going to be getting that going, the renderings and all that. And so he does all sorts of stuff. He flips. He's doing he's just doing a little bit of retail work for an old client too. So jack of all trades in the real estate business. So if you have any questions, you want to reach out. If you guys just want to grab lunch with the real estate heavyweights, please, we would love to meet with you. I'm Ashton Hines, Dallas Real Estate Guy on Instagram. You can follow me there and on Facebook. Follow my journey to 100 open houses this year. I think Tavis's will be numero 10, number 10 for the year. So I'm catching up a little bit, and I'm having a good time with it. So yeah, keep track there, and we still do a good job on the YouTube. I got to get going on YouTube, so we'll figure that out. But until next time, I hope you have a great day, and we'll talk to you soon.